G'day jabronis, it is the Verd here. Welcome back to week number 4 of the GBA Power Rankings. I'm of course not alone, I'm joined by Aberforth.
Hello.
And we are here again, ranking teams. And I'm very excited for it. It's been a very interesting week. Like we said last week, there were some very hype matchups. And there have been some big changes throughout the rankings. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, but without further ado, I think let's dive right on into our bottom 6, and it has shuffled around a bit. The bottom team has not changed, but there's been some movement because some of the lower teams had some really solid results this week.
Yeah,
let's just kind of explain the one team though that didn't have the most solid. Oh, to be fair, I felt this was the best game the Columbus Chew played all season. I don't know about you, but I think this is the best game they played all season.
Yes, it's improvement, definitely. Not there yet, as we've both agreed by putting him low. And the way he handled Zygarde was not brilliant, although the Whimsicott Ring knocking off the Porygon 2, I thought that was very nice from Joey's end. But Zygarde just ended up going ham, and when you don't actually bring a ground resist, that just kind of happens. So it was an improved performance. It was, I think, his closest result of the season, and hopefully this is a sign that things are on the up for him. But Coach Zed remains both of our bottom slots for pretty obvious reasons in all honesty.
Indeed. We are going to move on to a few teams now that have really shuffled around in their spots. The Victorian Shadows have gone down one spot. This is kind of a gimme. They are the only other team without a win so far, and I feel like against Aster, he didn't necessarily play too bad, but I feel Aster did actually just bring really solid prep and played exactly how we kind of expected him to play at the start of the season and got quite a solid result. So it wasn't really that Steve-O necessarily played badly. Like, a lot of his games this season haven't been down to him playing badly. I think just his opponents have played a lot better than he has, and I think that was the case again this week.
Yeah, I said it last week, I feel like he's played well in all of his games, he's just not quite been able to find the final push, which is just a bit of a shame, but it's the way it is, and hopefully he's going to get better as the season goes on. I did like the prep that he brought for the Scolipede in terms of the sub with the Alakazam. Equally though, Pin Missile was equal to that prep, so I'm seeing positive signs, and I did really like the Executor, and frankly the game could have gone quite differently if he'd managed to get the roll on the Zapdos.
Yeah, Zapdos is a huge problem for his team.
And it was, I believe it was something like, I think it was either 3 or 13, I don't know why, HP that the Zapdos lived to be hit on, and it was definitely a roll. I'm thinking it was 3 actually. And if it went down, that was a big problem for Necro's team, and it potentially could have swung the entire game the other way. So yeah,
for sure. Moving on to the next team here, we have the Detroit Steel Wings. I mean, I'm just going to vouch for it. The reason why he is 14th and say Aster and others are higher, quite put simply, his only win for the season has been against the Columbus Chew, and he just lost 5-0. Now, I know earlier in the season I was a bit iffy on like results and whatnot, but when it was against another team that we had a team that was actually lower than him in the rankings the previous week, I feel like this is a justified decision. I feel the Tangela set was actually really solid. He actually put in a lot of work checking a good amount of Aaron's team, but he just didn't bring as many checks for rain as I feel he could have in the matchup. And Aaron was disabled, especially with that Ludicolo. That Ludicolo put in a lot of work, and Crimson unfortunately didn't really have enough ways to deal with it, and it was just kind of a slow and systematic takedown by Aaron, so that's why I've got Crimson low.
Assault Vest was actually a really solid, nice bring on Ludicolo, given how especially offensive Crimson's team ended up being. Kind of amusingly, because I thought that it was the mon that put in the most work in the matchup, but quite amusingly, it's the only mon that died on Cybertron's team. But yeah, essentially this was just a game where I didn't feel like Crimson was in the match. I felt like Aaron dictated the flow of the game. He decided when things dropped, what they dropped to, and the way that he played the Ludicolo against Ludicolo, was just kind of letting it do what it wanted to do most of the time until he ended up killing it. And yeah, it just was not a very strong performance by Crimson at all. So I moved him down.
Number 13, we both have the Montreal Habsol. So our bottom 4 was the exact same. I feel like all of it made sense. Like, it was pretty clear that these were going to be.
We've not spent long on those because they're the ones that we feel are the least worthy of discussion.
I feel Asta, though, this was very promising because I feel like the last few games, I feel like his prep actually hasn't been that bad in his matches, barring the throat chop Scolipede. But I think this was one of those games actually where Asta played like we know he can play. We knew he could build, that wasn't a debate, like barring again the Scolipede. But this, like, he showed, and yes, there was the contention about the crit on Zapdos, how much would it have mattered in the course of the game, but I feel like Asta just had so much momentum, and like, especially the Scully just had such a good matchup. If the Araquan had got worn down, Scully kind of just went in regardless. And like you said before, the pin missile prep was fantastic on that. I feel that maybe he over-prepped a little bit, because like he was saying that, you know, he was bringing the Gore guys to cover a lot of Mons, and then when none of them turned up, he said it was basically useless, and I feel like that's just not how I would prep. I'd feel like if you're gonna bring a Mon, it has to, even if none of those things that it's meant, even if none of those things are there for it to check, still having something that it can do, instead of just like, I get that he was still able to use it alright in the game, but it, for all intents and purposes, was basically dead weight in that matchup. That's how he looked at it. I just feel like that's not the best kind of thought process to have when it comes to Mons. But other than that, I feel like, you know, he's moved up. So, I mean, if he can continue this form next week, that'd be really solid for him. You know, currently 1-3, but a couple more wins, and 3-3 doesn't look too bad in the grand scheme of things for him. But moving on, team that I have at 12th, you have at 11th, is the Melbourne Rotoms. I probably could move him up 1 point higher, but at the same time, I just felt like the teams above him are still just a bit better. However, I will say, like we said, his prep and his execution of his team was fantastic in this game. But if you want to touch on it a bit more, feel free.
Yeah, well, first of all, I agree with everything Verd said about Asta. Yeah. I was going to expand a little bit, but I won't bother. But yeah, I was actually very, very pleased with Cybertron's performance this week. I feel like he's been improving most of the time. And this week I really think we've seen the potential threat that he poses to quite a few coaches in the league. Even though it was against one of the people that we had ranked lower down, the way he played the game, in the way he, specifically the way he played the Ludicolo, I thought was incredibly impressive. It was our biggest victory this week, and I feel like Cybertron is on the up and up and potentially going to try and make a run for playoffs now. And in a Hack-free world, he would also have been 2-2, because he wouldn't be 2-2. In a Hack-free world, he wouldn't be 2-2, but he isn't 2-2 now. So it is a good foundation to push off from and go and try and make a really good playoff run. And sorry about the mix up with my words. I was thinking.
Yeah, I was gonna say he'd be 1-3 if it wasn't for hacks.
Yeah, no, I messed up. I've got my notes here, and I read from the wrong note.
It's all right.
But yeah, so 2-2. It is a strong foundation to push off and make a good playoff run. And someone else, 1-3. But for hacks, he might have been better, and it wasn't even 1-3. So never mind.
Fair enough. Well,
Mono was one button.
Well, a team you've actually put below the Melbourne Rotoms now is the Milwaukee Bewares. Obviously a rough week for Wolfie. Do you want to kind of talk about how you feel that match went?
It's not even just this match. It's more of a matter of throughout the last several weeks, I feel like Wolfie has actually been on a little bit of a downswing, and momentum is not on his side, whereas I think it is on. In terms of, if we're talking about, we mentioned Throat Chop Scolipede a couple times when we were talking about Asta, but if Asta had brought a normal Scolipede set, which he did name his video after us, which is, I thought amusing, then Wolfie would have lost that game as well, and given the way he's played and the fact that he's been in losing positions a few times now, and he's been a bit worried, I thought that his performances have slipped since the good start he had to the season. So I've moved him down lower, and I'm hoping that he bounces back, because I really hope to see Wolfie do really well.
Again, I guess, like, just to touch on, he is another team like Crimson, whose only win for the season, I believe, has been against the Columbus Chew. But I do have Wolfie a tiny... well, obviously against Aster, yeah, like, without, you know... Yeah, no, it wasn't even hacks. Without team...
Without
throat chop Scolipede, basically. That's just going to be our meme for the entire...
We need to stop.
I'm not even... we love you. Aster knows that I love him. It's fine. The team that I actually have finishing off the bottom 6 is the San Francisco Giants. Now, this could have been the Giants or the Bewares. I felt they were very much around the same area. But I just felt that, you know, Gio didn't prep too badly, I feel, for Lars, but I feel that he was just very severely outplayed. And, like, you just get those weeks that happen, and, you know, I never looked at that game and thought to myself, oh man, Lars is in trouble here. Like, we've seen it a lot with Envy at the start of the season, where he never really seemed... It wasn't even like domination, not in the sense of Envy. This was more where it...
Okay, I just like feeling shitty words for you.
It was, I guess, more that he didn't really see any threat, in a way, like, during the game, and was able to snuff out anything. Like, obviously the Ditto, which Gio is so known for, the only real setup sweeper that Lars brought was a bulk up taunt, which meant that the boosts that Ditto was receiving didn't really mean that much, because Ditto won't hit as hard as a Tornadus does. And if it's a choice scarf set, then Lars can live the hit and then go for his own bulk up potentially if he wants to before the Ditto attacks because of Prankster. So I just feel overall he was able to handle a lot of Gio. So it's like, obviously it wasn't just the Ditto play, but for Gio, I just felt that, you know, I mean, he knows it himself too, like, the prep wasn't his best. He did try in the battle, but I just feel that he was quite humbled here by Lars. But obviously you have Gio a little bit higher up, as we can see on the next slide here. But the team you actually... I mean, we might as well have you talk about Gio, since I've just discussed him, and he is there at number 9.
Well, Gio... I moved him up a lot the previous week because I felt like his performances had been really, really good, and I kind of stick by that. He didn't have his best week so far in this round of battles, but generally his play has been good, and he's gone up against some of the hardest coaches and performed well. So I do still have faith that he's going to do well. But if he loses again next week, then he's going to slide back on down the power rankings again, because this is more me keeping faith with someone who I think has played well throughout the entire season, as opposed to a reflection of their game, particularly this week. Whereas I did move Joey up one spot. I felt like this was a solid, more what I was expecting from Joey throughout the season, in terms of a more solid performance. He prepped differently this time, as opposed to bringing a Selgor plus setup, and it paid off for him. He also finally brought me, so that made it really tempting just to put him up really high, because he nicknamed him on after me. But yeah, he's playing more like the way I expected him to. At the same time, though, this was against the bottom-ranked team that we both have had the last several weeks, so yeah, that's not exactly brilliant. And I'm more looking forward to seeing if he can extend this form into next week as well, because frankly, he needs to do more than just one win, given that he's not performed at the level that I was expecting him to so far this season.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I have him at 9th. I mean, I moved him up 2 spots. I just felt that the 2 people above him in Wolf and Gio, like, I understand that you obviously had the faith in Gio, which makes a ton of sense. But for me, like, my patience was wearing with both of them, and so because they lost again, okay, I had to move Joey higher. I feel this game definitely could be a confidence booster for him, and like you said, he tried some different things and got the result. So I'm not going to touch on that much more. You basically summarized that. But what I will talk about is Wolfie, who I put at number 10. The main thing for me that really upset me about watching Wolfie's game was, like, I was sitting there, I get that when you're in the game, it's completely different mindset, you're under pressure a lot, but this is a guy that, like, is consistently under pressure in, like, VGC and all that stuff. and is able to make the right play. And I just sat there, like I was literally like sitting there while watching these videos, like cooking food, and I could see what the play was. Like I could see that like you could tell when it was the right time to click a certain move, but Wolfie was just like tilting himself, and like we all get like that, you know, when maybe we're on the ladder or other things, we just over predict or make the wrong call. And like you were saying, he's on tilt pretty much is how I feel Wolfie's GBA season is going right now. I still have him quite high, I suppose, because I still have that glimmer of faith. I feel like he's good enough to where he could have really...
He's definitely
he
good
definitely
enough.
could have made that
we should be clear here. We're not questioning his ability.
No, of course not.
We're saying that he's off form, and because of that off formness, he could potentially dig himself into a hole.
That is the thing that we are mainly concerned about with Wolf. We do know how good he is as a player, but right now he is not playing to the best of his ability. I'm hoping next week he can recover that a bit, but for now he will sit at number 10 for me. But on to the number 8 team that we have. We both have the Florida Gators, currently sitting at 2-2. 2 losses in a row though for Gator, and this one was a bit more convincing than his loss to Chimp. Obviously there was an element of hacks in there, but at the same time, I don't know, this didn't feel like the best Gator prep for a game. Not to say John didn't prep really well himself, but I just feel like
he covered it himself though. Gator, he said himself that he was disappointed that he didn't bring in any toxic mod, and I mean, you say it was a bit of hacks. It was a calm mind war. They're one with crits between mons that don't have a way of attacking on the physical side, and frankly, Klefki versus Cresselia, calm mind war. It's a crit either way, and it happened that the crit went against him, but I wouldn't call that a loss to hacks.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying that at all. He still...
I know what you were trying to say. I just feel like maybe it was worded a little poorly. But he covered it himself in his video. He was actually quite self-depreciating in it. But he didn't play that well this game. He was on tilt a little bit from the Cresselia set, and doesn't feel like he's playing as well on Wi-Fi, just because of there are differences between Showdown format and Wi-Fi format. Plus, he said that he's not really into mons at the moment, and the dipping motivation and his poor form has meant that I've moved him down. I think was that 2 slots.
Yep.
Yeah, and hopefully that he's going to bounce back, because we know that Gator can play really, really well, or at least I do. But it is concerning to me that he's already not motivated, and it's relatively early on in the season, and he's in bad form, so I think I could see him slipping down further as well if he doesn't find motivation somehow.
Yeah, I think next week is definitely make or break, because the difference between 3-2 and 2-3 is a lot bigger than people realize, even at this early stage of the competition. But moving on to round out our next group here, we have I've got the New Orleans Pelipers, and you have the San Jose Sharpedos. Pelipers obviously coming off that win against Gator. I mean, to be fair, I don't know how much the crit even matter, in the sense that, like, the thing with Crest is it's so fat that even when you crit it, it's probably not dying, and it just moonlights, and it's stupid. It's such a stupid mon. But you know, John capitalized on, you know, Gator's lack of prep there, and, you know, that's, you know, credit to him as a good battler and a good prepper, and he ended up getting the result. Not really much else I can say about the game. I think he managed it quite well, but again, like we were saying with the game, like with Mono and Wolf, when your opponent's on that bit of tilt, you can quite easily get momentum into your favor. And I'm not saying that the crit mattered in any sense. It was more, it just very much shifted everything into John's favor, and from that point on, it was basically his game to lose.
Yeah. I agree, in all honesty, with most of the points you said, but I valued his win a little bit higher than I think you did, because I feel like it wasn't. Despite the fact that his opponent was on tilt, it was an impressive win against someone who has been impressive throughout the season. Well, not throughout the season, but over the course of the previous 3 weeks, which is all the season is right now. I can't really say throughout the season.
Yeah.
3 weeks. And I feel like this is showing signs that he's going to play as well as we both expected him to at the start of the season, because he did play well throughout the game. Seeing how little answers Gator had to the Cresselia, and just the way that he was playing around the threat of Klefki, not the threat of Klefki, but the way he was managing the calm mind situation against Klefki, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, was very solid on his part. And he ended up getting the crit. He attacked more, and when you attack more, you end up giving yourself the highest chance to break through. But that covers why I put him at number 6. I put the San Jose Sharpedos at number 7. This was despite the fact that they had a really, really close game against Chimpact, who I have obviously rated really highly throughout the season. And this mostly boils down to the fact that in the end it wasn't a victory, despite the fact that Drain Punch probably would have meant that it would have been. But I'm not going to raise people for what sets they considered bringing when they didn't actually end up bringing them. And in the end, it ended up being a decision that ended up costing Tom. So I was not really willing to raise him up when he did lose and he didn't have the way to win in terms of the Drain Punch. And I don't like raising people above people when they lose games, basically. So I was unwilling to raise Tom a slot despite losing. So yeah, that covers why I've got Tom still at 7. Both of them have been impressive, and this one was probably my closest decision in the entire rankings for me, in terms of which to put at 6 and which to put at 7. It's splitting hairs at this point, really. But yeah, do you want to cover why you put Tom a bit higher?
Yeah, for sure. So as we go into the next group here, yeah. So I have Tom at 6. I think it was the same thing you said with John. It was just last week I had Tom at 6 and you had him at 7. So it was more my same thing. I feel though, I feel his prep was good, but I couldn't move him up and down, and it wasn't necessarily because I'm not a huge fan of moving people because of ifs. Like, I don't want to hear like, oh, if I had Drain Punch, because at the same time, like, it was the same thing with Chimp. Like, he could have brought, you know, quick attack on his Victini. He could have brought, you know, more bulk or power on his. It does get quick attack. It's kind of terrifying. People don't realize it, and then
I mean, sure,
people don't realize that. And Banditini can actually put in work with quick attack. It's wild, but
I will let you prove that yourself.
It's just the thing that like I'm not a.
If we go into ifs and buts about various situations, we can't really. We'd be here hours each week.
What we have to deal with, guys, is the facts, and the fact is that Tom didn't bring the appropriate prep, and so he lost a game that realistically he could have won. Not saying he would have won, because there's still a lot of things to factor in, but regardless, I'm not going to move him up because I don't feel like he deserves to be moved up, but I'm also not going to move him down. And it's the same thing basically Abe was saying. I'm not going to...
Because it didn't, his loss was a convincing performance regardless against one of the best players. So we're not going to move him down for this, but we're not comfortable moving him up for it either.
Yeah, I'm not going to prattle on about it. You guys understand that. But we are going to move on to another 2 teams we just have in different order. But I think they're just in different order because we had them in different order last week, and they both... And they both played really well. Like, I mean, we've kind of talked about both of them. I haven't really talked much about Mono, but I feel like Mono's gameplay was mainly just that, you know, Wolf was on tilt and Mono is a good player. And so he kind of just controlled the game. And, like, Wolf was, like, quite embarrassed after the game. And I think that's just because Mono is probably one of the better players in the entire league when it comes to just Pokemon management. We saw that last week against Necro, where he looked in a very losing position, but he preserved the things that he knew could win him the game. And, you know, he just consistently does that, and realistically should be even higher than this after that week 1 result, but it's definitely positive for him. It should be interesting next week, though, because Mono does play Tom, so that should be a very interesting matchup. Any other notes you want to make about Mono's game?
Well, I kind of already spoiled my Mono thing when I was talking about Cybertron. Yeah, if not for hacks, he'd be undefeated alongside Chimpact and Jolt. He's just been playing really, really solidly throughout the season, I feel, and I'm not going to move him down as a result. He played really well this game, but, I mean, equally his opponent was on tilt, as you said, but it doesn't take anything away from his performance. And Lars played well, but equally, I'm not willing to move him above Mono when Mono played really well as well. So, yeah. It's more maintaining the status quo for both of us, I feel. Oh, I did really like the fact that his setup sweeper in the Tornadus was a set that would 100% beat a Ditto, unless the Ditto got in when it was already massively weakened. Interestingly enough, I'm not sure, but I feel like no, because he wouldn't have enough turns. I was about to make a comment about rest, but no, that wouldn't.
I actually feel like what could have been a better set for Geo, thinking about it, if he knew that the Ditto's best chance of sweeping was picking up the Tornadus' boosts, I feel like instead of a Choice Scarf, he should have run...
What, are you thinking bulk up?
No, I was actually saying that... No, this is for Geo, not for Lars.
Oh, okay, sorry.
What Geo should have brought instead of Scarf Ditto was Red Card Ditto, so he could have stolen all the Acrobatics boosts and then forced out the Tornadus, so it wouldn't have any of its boosts left. But... I mean, that's just thinking in, like, 3018, but regardless...
I mean, it did KO the Tornadus.
That is true.
It was just...
but yeah, Lars...
I mean, it didn't fail. The fact that
no, it didn't.
There's the thing that...
Look, I just come up with really stupid sets.
But I was impressed by the Tornadus prep, and he ended up playing the rest of the game well as well. I feel like it's a shame that Tornadus only got one kill.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it deserved more from the strength.
It was definitely one of the MVPs of that game.
Yeah, despite the fact that it's the only Mon that got a kill that also died on Lars's team, which I find amusing. But I'm not going to move him above Mono for that. And shall we move on to our top three?
I'm only going to touch on Lars like incredibly briefly. Basically, just agreeing with everything you said. I think that it's the same thing with Mono and Lars. Like you said, status quo. I couldn't move Lars up because I feel like he's not on the level of the top three yet. However, there's one that is dangling very close right now on the tightrope.
I wouldn't even say
I'm saying so. Depending on how his next week goes, I'm saying he's dangling.
I mean, if he loses next week, then fair enough. But I'm not good. I wouldn't go so far as saying he's dangling already.
This week was let's take him out of their misery. Here is our top three, and I think for the first time in a long time, we actually agree on the top three, which is.
I think this is the first time it's in the entire
Which is kind of crazy, but yeah, as you guys know, Envy and Jolt played in basically a clash of the top two teams, sorry, Chimpact, and Jolt.
Basically, Jolt and Envy played in a clash of number 1 v number 3. You're welcome, Chimpact.
Anyway, it was a fantastic game. Like, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me talking about this is this was one of the very rare times that I've ever seen Envy humbled. Like, genuinely humbled. And, like, that's just a testament to how good Jolt's prep and play was. Granted, Envy didn't bring all the threats that Jolt expected, but that doesn't take away at all from how well Jolt managed his game and how well that he played. And I put Envy at number 3, and you probably put him there too, because he's now not an undefeated team. Like, you got Jolt and you got Chimpact up there, and I'm honestly saying, like, Envy's on the tightrope because Lars and Mono have both played very, very well this season, and if they both go to 4-1 and Envy goes to 3-2, it's going to be very hard to, you know, have Envy still in that top 3 for how well the other people have played.
That's a fair comment. I would say that I don't think he's dangling from a tightrope, just because before this game he was our dead set number 1 easily, because he was doing super well, and I feel like this is just more of a testament to how well Jolt's been playing. But Envy was dominating opponents. He was easily our number 1 ranked squad in the entire season, and he was playing incredibly well. And I don't think that that's going to change just because of this one result. I'm not going to say he's dangling by a tightrope, because I fully expect him to bounce back and come back with a really solid win, showing the Envy of the first 3 weeks. I feel like this is more Jolt played and prepped amazingly. The way he handled the situation, the way he scouted out early game with the Celesteela, or forced Envy to play around the Celesteela rather, dictating the flow of the game. His play with the Gardevoir, mostly reading Envy switches, and always clicking Protect as if it was a Scarfmon, bizarrely. But managing to threaten everything with his Gardevoir, The way that he managed the situation with the Seismitoad, the fact that Empoleon didn't manage to get up a defog, which I thought was amazing personally. Yeah, all of it was just incredible play by Jolt, and I don't think that detracts from Envy too much. I've moved him down to number 3 because I feel like Chimpact has been playing almost as solidly as Envy was before this week, so I wasn't willing to move Chimpact down at all. But I still think that there's a gap between Envy and Mono and Lars, despite the fact that both of them have been performing really well. I feel like their wins have been much less convincing than Envy's does, and that's just a testament towards Envy. I touched on it briefly. I wasn't going to move Chimpact up for this, but I wasn't going to move him down for it either. He played solidly against Tom, who's been doing really well this season in my opinion, actually, despite the fact that I've still got him at number 7. And it ended up being a close game that he managed to pull through. But throughout the game, I did feel like he had most of the momentum on his side, and he was playing the game and Tom was responding more than the other way around. Although it was more of an even game, it's not always going to be 100% one way. And I genuinely feel like you're underrating how well Chimp has played throughout the entire season. For me, the choice between him and Jolt was actually a close one, despite the fact that Jolt dominated Envy. Just simply because I feel like Chimpact has been playing that well throughout the entire season.
Oh no, I'm not saying that putting Jolt at number 1 was a breeze at all. For me, it was more, I guess, the difference between maybe you and I was that I had Jolt. I already had Jolt number 2, and I had Chimp at number 3, and they were very close the entire season. But for me, this is just a massive result for Jolt, and I feel like not putting him first after doing that would have.
Yes, I mean I did end up putting him first.
But at the same time, I am fully aware of how good Chimpact has played, and these next few weeks are going to be very interesting with how I feel the top 5 plays out. Because I think, John and Tom, they're doing alright. Gator, if he picks it back up, is okay. But yeah, I think that top 5 right now is looking very, very strong. However, we're not even halfway through the season yet, so anything can happen. I guess the one thing I'll just touch on with Envy is the only fear that I had when it came to the tightrope was, and this happens with a lot of players, and I never understand how this happens.
Losing leads to another?
Not even that, it's also like sometimes a player can come along and show an opponent's weaknesses, and when it's like, you always see it like in, fights and other stuff where they're able to do something and then it's like a problem. And I don't know if it's going to then, like, this is being far-fetched, but I don't know if it's going to be like a psychological issue for Envy. I agree with you. I think he's going to bounce back. Like, I only mention the tightrope because I feel that although there is still a gap between him and Lars and Mono, that gap will close significantly if he loses next week and they both win. That was kind of the point that I was making.
Okay. Shall we praise Jolt even more than we already have, given that we didn't really officially touch on him? Or do you think we've sung his praises enough?
The main thing to touch on with Jolt is regardless of the caliber.
Hats off to you. That's the best.
Regardless of the caliber of opponent that he's played this season, he has gotten convincing results. Like against a lot of people that we didn't expect. Like, we've known Jolt for a long time, and we were sitting there like, oh god, Joey's got a pretty good matchup, and Envy's got a pretty good matchup, and he's smashed them both. And like everyone he's played so far has been incredibly impressive. So I mean, that's just a testament. I feel like this is
the most on form that Jolt has been since I've met him, really, which is several years ago. I feel like he's playing the best Pokemon of his life right now, and dominating Envy in the way that he did was just incredibly impressive, and I think I've got my favorite to win the entire thing, even this early on.
I love Jolt, but I can't back him yet. I think it's still a bit too early for my liking. I definitely think for now, what I will say though is that I believe it's going to be somebody in that top 5. That top 5 that we have.
I'm willing to lay down actual
I feel like it's going to be one of them, but at the same time, I know there are a lot of wild cards. So that's why I don't want to bank on anybody yet. I mean, obviously, you guys in the comments will have your thoughts. So tell us right now, we're 4 weeks into the season. The rankings have changed a lot. what team do you feel right now, after the first 4 weeks, is your favorite right now for the championship? Because there are some big matches still to come up in the next few weeks that are going to be very interesting, but we'd love to hear your thoughts. But that is going to end it for us here with the power rankings for week 4. We hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, make sure that you like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the GBA channel if you haven't already. And like I said with that comment, don't forget to also leave us your potential rankings, your thoughts on the rankings, and like I said, what team you feel right now is currently the front runner to win the entire thing. It is quite early in the season, but Abe's got his pick, so we want to hear what yours is. Thank you again for joining me, Abe.
Thank you for having me.
And last but not least, I guess, go check out all of the coaches that are part of the GBA. Go check out all the analysts. There are some other fantastic analyst videos to check out. And we will catch you guys next week with Week 5 Power Rankings, which will be, I believe, the halfway point of the regular season, which will be interesting to see how different our initial rankings were compared to where we are halfway through the season. Should be a fun analysis, but that's going to do it for us. This is Verd and Abe, and we'll catch you guys next week with some more Power Rankings.